In our story today, we find Jesus at the Festival of Booths in Jerusalem. It was one of the main 3 religious pilgrimage festivals. So there were devout people from all over who had traveled to the city for the festival. And if you look backwards in John just a little bit earlier in chapter 7, you'll see that Jesus didn't really want to go. His brothers were trying to goad him into going, so of course he had to dig in his heels and say he's staying home. This is not super relevant to the sermon, but I thought some of you might take comfort, including my own child, in knowing that even Jesus had issues with annoying little brothers, right? But he ends up going to the festival about halfway through the week-long celebrations. Better late than never. The Festival of Booths was a huge celebration, a reminder of the time that the people of Israel spent wandering in the wilderness, camping out in little huts or booths, so many generations before. It was a celebration of God's provision for them and God's presence with the people, a celebration of freedom from slavery. And it was a time to pray for God's continued provision and presence, especially in the form of rain. They knew, as we know, that water is life, and the festival was centered around water rituals and prayers for rain for the upcoming agricultural season. Some sources say that on the final day of the festival, there was this dramatic moment, the climax of the 7 days, where the priest goes down in a ritual parade to the pool of Siloam on the outskirts of the city, draws out water in a golden pitcher, and then processes back up to the altar, the crowds cheering and chanting and praying as they went. Some say the priest circled the altar 7 times and then poured out the water on the altar where all the sacrifices had been made all week. This is the moment that Jesus chooses to make a scene. So far, Jesus had been laying low. He was teaching, but staying out of trouble. But this moment is his cue to step out of the shadows. And it makes me think of the protesters at the Texas Capitol this last session, waiting patiently, then unfurling a banner over the balcony of the Texas House Gallery just at the right moment, right? Making a scene, proving a point, maybe getting into some trouble, but highlighting a really important division among the people. That's what Jesus is doing here in this text. In the midst of this dramatic moment, the parade of water, the prayers and supplications for rain, Jesus stands up and cries out, "You want water? Come to me. You want God's presence? Here I am. If anyone thirsts, come to me and drink. The one who believes in me, as the scripture has said, from their belly shall flow rivers of living water." You got to respect his confidence, right? Jesus disrupts the leader's ritual. He disrupts the people's prayers. He disrupts business as usual, like so many prophets before him. He does an action. That's what's happening here. I want to make sure you see that. He's making a scene. If you need some ideas, by the way, for political action, just go back and read your Hebrew prophets. They're very creative about getting their point across. So what's Jesus' point here? What's he trying to say? I think it's something like, stop looking out there for something to fill you up, and look within. God's Spirit comes from within you. You already have everything that you need. The Festival of Booths might seem foreign and far removed from our world, but we know what it is to need, right? We know the feeling of thirst. We know what it's like to have a deep desire to be refilled, replenished. Our world tries to keep us in a perpetual state of need and scarcity, right? We glorify busyness and productivity and the constant search for self-improvement as a way of life, right? That's how we live in our world. We wear perpetual burnout like a badge of honor. And we've got our own rituals and practices for trying to fill that consistent emptiness that we experience. Maybe it's religion, right? Maybe we're trying so hard to get it right, to make God happy, looking up to the sky and waiting for the lightning bolts, right? The inspiration or the healing or the peace that will finally someday come. Maybe it's the multi-billion-dollar self-care industry, right, that promises us to quench our thirst, give us contentment, happiness, relaxation with just one more massage or pedicure, one more trip to the gym. Maybe it's climbing the ladder of success. That's our ritual to fill the need that's inside of us. Wearing yourself thin with hard work. Maybe it's checking out of our need-filled world, numbing ourselves with alcohol or with apathy. Maybe it's you fill in the blank. There are a million places that we look for satisfaction, for sustenance. And not all of them are bad, but they leave us wanting still. Still seeking, still searching for a way to quench our thirst, to fill up the emptiness, the lack, the need that we feel inside. And here's Jesus disrupting our constant seeking. Jesus disrupts our sincere and searching prayers. Jesus makes a scene, unfurls a protest banner from the balcony of our heart, gets our attention to say, stop. Stop looking out there for something to fill you up. Look within. God's Spirit flows within you. You already have everything that you need. I know. There are all kinds of reasons to dismiss Jesus, to even be offended, right, by his protest. Maybe like the religious leaders of his day, we dismiss him on a theological technicality. We can find those all day long. Lord knows there are lots of people in our world unable to be set free because of theological technicalities, right? Or maybe it seems like Jesus is ignorant of the real world, the real needs of the world. Surely real hunger, real thirst can't be solved by some woo-woo soul water, right? Surely God's provision will come with more power, more might, more real change. But what if Jesus is right? What if the good news he offers is true? What if real freedom comes from inside you and flows out, not from outside filling something within? What if it's not an institution that will save you? What if it's not power from on high that will fill you? What if you have everything you need already? Depths and depths of nourishment flowing where you thought you might be empty. Beloveds, I think Jesus is telling us to stop trying to fill the emptiness inside with whatever we can find out there and recognize the living water that we have access to right now, right here, within yourself, within each other. Stop looking up in desperation, in supplication. Look in. Jesus invites you to come home to yourself first and see that you have what you need. This is the good news of God's grace, that you have more than you need. What would happen if you believed that? What would happen if we believed that? This is absolutely about spiritual nourishment. That is important. But it's not only about that, right? Before this moment at the festival, Jesus has been traveling all around, teaching, meeting the real physical needs of the people, feeding them, healing them, creating community, quenching real thirst. Jesus invites us not just to drink and be satisfied and find contentment with the living water that God's Spirit provides us, but to be the living water in our world, to be the real water for our community in our world sometimes. The source of nourishment, the source of grace, the source of food and clothing and water when that's what's needed. What would happen if we believed that this community had that capacity? What if this place was not primarily an oasis for thirsty travelers to fill themselves up, but a meeting point where we remembered and recognized the living water within ourselves, where all the tributaries of God's abundance that we each uniquely carry flowed together to create a raging river of abundance here, swirling with all the unique and deep gifts of life that each one of you brings, that each one of you already has, and flowing out into our neighborhood, into our world. Beloveds, we have everything that we need. Waiting for more members, more money, more influence, more, you fill in the blank, is silly. God calls us to look inside to recognize the abundance that is here right now, right here. To find and offer spiritual and material nourishment, abundance. Jesus is the living water, and so are you. So are we. Jesus isn't waiting for an apocalypse. Jesus isn't waiting for a perfect political leader. Jesus isn't waiting for a religion to get it together. Thank God. Jesus empowers you right now to feed, to heal, to offer God's grace and love and freedom like a river. Stop looking up. Don't wait for your prayers to be answered. Start answering them. God is with you. God is in you. You have everything that you need. We have everything that we need. Thanks be to God.